Without any direction after leaving the orphanage, Vaelis never imagined she would be chosen to deliver medicine to the castle of the most feared Alpha King in the realm. People said no one entered his chambers without paying a price. There were whispers of a curse that turned men into monsters. Hello friends. Before we journey deeper into Vaelis' story, I invite you to subscribe and share in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence here matters. Now, let's continue. On the night of the lunar eclipse, agonized howls and the sound of shattering magic echoed through the royal wing. Driven by her healer's instinct, she entered where she should not have, and he caught her scent before he ever saw her face. When he finally found her, something impossible happened. Vaelis was the only one capable of calming his wolf. At dawn, she fled, believing herself unworthy. And now the Alpha King hunts her across the entire kingdom, guided only by a lavender-scented handkerchief and a bond he refuses to break. The door of St. Cala's sanctuary closed behind Vaelis with a sound that echoed like a final sentence. She stood frozen on the threshold far too long, her fingers clenched around the strap of the cloth bag that held everything she owned, 2 patched dresses worn thin at the elbows, an embroidered handkerchief with her initials, the only object the Mother Superior said had arrived with her when she was abandoned there as an infant, and 3 copper coins that would not buy enough bread for even 5 days. 23 years spent within those cold stone walls. Sleeping in narrow bunks that smelled of mildew. Eating watery porridge that never quite filled her stomach. Learning to read by candlelight. Tending the sick in the sanctuary's small healing room, the only place she had ever felt useful. And now, simply nothing. No farewell embrace. No blessing. Only the Mother Superior saying in a weary, dismissive voice that Vaelis was too old to remain there. That they needed the bed for younger children. That it was time she made her own way. My own way. Vaelis stared at the dirt road stretching before her, disappearing into the twisted shadows of the thornwood forest that surrounded the village. Which way? I don't even know where to go. She never knew who her parents were. She never had a surname. Thorne was simply the name given to all foundlings at St. Cala's, after the thorny forest that encircled them. She never belonged to anyone. Vaelis took one step, then another, and then simply began to walk. There was nowhere else to go but forward. The village of Ashwood that surrounded the sanctuary was small, poor, forgotten even by the kingdom's tax collectors. Low houses of weathered wood and crumbling clay. Muddy streets that turned to rivers when it rained. People with their heads perpetually bowed, working themselves to exhaustion just to survive one more season. She walked to the edge of the village where an ancient well surrounded by moss-covered stones stood, and sat down there, her legs trembling with exhaustion, hunger gnawing at her insides like a living thing. She pulled one of the copper coins from her bag and stared at it, the metal dull and scratched. 3 coins. That's all I have between me and starvation. That was when she heard the voices. They are hiring at the castle, you know, a middle-aged woman was saying to another as they drew water from the well, their buckets scraping against stone. My cousin sent word from Shadowmere. They say Alpha King Drayven is expanding his household staff, healers, kitchen workers, chambermaids. They pay in silver. Silver. The other woman let out a dry, bitter laugh. And who's foolish enough to work in the kingdom of wolves? You know what they say about that place. Creatures that shift into beasts. People who enter the royal wing and are never seen again. The king himself is cursed, they say he's more monster than man. Cursed or not, silver is silver, the first woman replied pragmatically. And according to travelers, he barely shows himself anymore. Stays locked away in the East Wing for reasons people whisper about but no one knows for certain. The ones who work there are common folk. Humans like us. Vaelis remained completely still, every word sinking into her like stones into deep water. Castle. Work. Silver. She knew almost nothing about the world of the wolves, only fragments of stories she'd heard when travelers occasionally stopped in Ashwood. Tales of shifters, creatures half-human and half-beast who ruled entire kingdoms with ancient laws and primal power. They spoke of rigid pack hierarchies, powerful alphas who could kill with a glance, strange rituals performed under full moons. They spoke of the kingdom of Shadowmere, whose obsidian capital lay 3 days' ride north, and of Castle Shadowthorn, a black fortress carved into the mountains where the feared Alpha King Drayven Korr ruled alone, unmarked by any mate, haunted by shadows no one dared name. The stories always painted the wolves as dangerous, savage, unpredictable. But Vaelis looked at the 3 copper coins resting in her palm and thought, what do I have to lose? She stood, tucked the coins back into her bag, and approached the 2 women with her heart hammering against her ribs. Excuse me for interrupting. Her voice came out softer than she intended, almost apologetic. Do you know exactly where I could apply for work at the castle? The 2 women turned, looking her up and down with expressions that shifted between surprise and pity. Are you serious, girl? The older one frowned, taking in Vaelis's threadbare dress and the dark circles beneath her eyes. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks, and you want to work in a castle full of wolves. Vaelis felt her face heat with shame, but she lifted her chin. I don't have anywhere else to go. That's why I need work. Any work. The woman exchanged a long look with her companion, then sighed heavily. Very well. If that's truly what you want, travel to the Grey Raven Tavern in the village of Thornwick, half a day's walk from here along the eastern road. They say the castle's head healer, Lady Ceres Nightshade, will be there tomorrow at dawn, interviewing candidates for household positions. She paused, her expression darkening. But listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, girl. Castle Shadowthorn is not a place for those who fear the dark. And that king. She shook her head. They say even his own guards are terrified of him. Vaelis nodded, tightening her grip on her bag strap until her knuckles went white. Thank you. The following morning, Vaelis arrived at the Grey Raven Tavern before the sun had fully crested the mountains. There were other women already waiting, perhaps a dozen, all with expressions ranging from desperate hope to poorly concealed terror. No one spoke much. They simply waited, each lost in their own fears and calculations. When the tavern door finally opened and a tall, elegant figure entered, the room fell into immediate, instinctive silence. Lady Ceres Nightshade was exactly the kind of woman who made Vaelis feel invisible without saying a single word. She was tall and slender, with silver-streaked black hair coiled into an elaborate style and eyes so pale they looked almost colorless. She wore dark robes that marked her as a high-ranking healer, and she moved with the precision of someone who had never doubted her place in the world. Good morning. Her voice was cold, efficient, entirely devoid of warmth. I am Lady Ceres Nightshade, head healer of Castle Shadowthorn. I'm here to select competent individuals to join the household staff, assistant healers, kitchen workers, and chamber attendants. If chosen, you will receive lodging, meals, and payment in silver. Any disobedience, theft, or breach of protocol will result in immediate dismissal and prosecution under wolf law. Understood. All of them nodded in terrified silence. Lady Ceres began to walk among the women, examining each with a clinical, dissecting gaze. Some she dismissed immediately with barely a glance. Others received a curt nod. When it was Vaelis's turn, her stomach twisted into knots. Name. Vaelis. Surname. Vaelis hesitated, feeling heat crawl up her neck. I don't have one. I was raised at St. Calla's Sanctuary. Lady Ceres's eyebrow lifted slightly, but she made no comment. Age. 23. Experience. I worked in the sanctuary's healing room since I was 14. I can prepare poultices, set broken bones, recognize medicinal herbs, and I learn quickly. Can you read? Yes. The Mother Superior taught us. Lady Ceres studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment, and Vaelis felt as though she were being weighed and measured against some invisible standard. You look like you'd collapse under the weight of a medical bag, the healer said at last, her tone almost mocking. I'm stronger than I look, Vaelis replied, forcing her voice to stay steady. Something flickered in Lady Ceres's pale eyes, amusement, perhaps, or calculation. Very well. You're hired. Present yourself at the castle gates tomorrow at dawn. Bring only essentials. Everything else will be provided. Vaelis's heart leaped. Thank you, As Lady Ceres moved on to the next candidate, Vaelis clutched her bag tighter, her handkerchief pressed against her palm beneath the worn fabric. She had no idea she had just stepped into the path of destiny, or that within the black walls of Castle Shadowthorn, a cursed king would scent lavender and rain on the wind and know, with soul-deep certainty, that everything was about to change. Vaelis reached the gates of Castle Shadowthorn as the sun was just beginning to pierce through the mountain mist. The castle was immense, far larger than any structure she had ever imagined possible. Black towers rose against the dawn sky like claws reaching toward heaven. Obsidian walls encircled the grounds, and dark banners bearing the sigil of a howling wolf snapped violently in the wind. Guards patrolled the ramparts in synchronized formation, and Vaelis could feel the weight of their gazes tracking her approach even from this distance. These were not ordinary men, they moved with predatory grace, their eyes occasionally flashing gold in the early light. Wolves. All of them. She was not the only new hire. 6 other women waited at the massive iron gates, all looking equally lost and terrified. None of them spoke. They simply stood there, clutching their meager belongings, waiting for whatever came next. A guard, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek, finally approached and gestured for them to follow. He led them through the gates without a word, across inner courtyards paved with black stone, through corridors so long and cold they seemed to swallow sound itself, until they reached a side wing where the servants' quarters were located. "You'll sleep here." The guard indicated a long room lined with simple wooden bunks. "Meals are served in the lower kitchen at dawn and sunset. Do not leave your assigned work areas without permission. Do not speak to members of the court unless directly addressed. And above all," he paused, his expression hardening into something that looked like genuine warning. "Stay away from the East Wing. The king values his isolation. Those who violate his privacy do not receive second chances." Vaelis swallowed hard against the knot forming in her throat. She had not seen the king yet. She did not know if she ever would. But just knowing he existed somewhere within these black walls made something strange and inexplicable twist in her chest. The first days were brutal. Vaelis worked in the healing chambers under Lady Ceres's cold, exacting supervision. She sorted medicinal herbs until her fingers were stained green and purple. She ground powders in heavy mortars until her arms ached. She carried water from the wells, prepared poultices for injured guards, cleaned blood from treatment tables, and stitched torn fabric for bandages. She worked from before dawn until long after darkness fell, and when she finally collapsed onto her narrow bunk each night, she slept like the dead. 3 weeks passed in this rhythm. Vaelis learned the castle's maze-like layout. She learned which corridors to avoid, which guards were kind and which were cruel, which kitchen workers would share extra bread and which would report you for taking it. But there was something else she began to notice, something that whispered beneath the surface of daily routine. Sometimes, while working near the healing chamber windows that overlooked the inner gardens, she would see guards hurrying past carrying bundles of rare herbs. Not the common medicinal plants they used for everyday injuries, but exotic specimens she recognized from the sanctuary's oldest texts: moonflower root, wolfsbane prepared in very specific ways, silver leaf that only grew in cursed ground. Once, she overheard 2 senior healers whispering when they thought no one was listening. "It's for the king," one of them murmured, her voice tight with frustration. "Lady Ceres has tried everything, healers from across the realm, witches from the northern covens, even blood mags from the eastern territories. Nothing works." "The curse is ancient," the other replied grimly. "They say only death can break it now." Or. She trailed off. "Or what?" "Nothing. Forget I spoke." Then they noticed Vaelis organizing supplies nearby and fell silent immediately, their expressions closing like shuttered windows. Vaelis did not ask questions. Servants who asked too many questions did not last long, and she needed this position desperately. During all that time, she never saw the king. It was as if he were a phantom. The staff whispered about it constantly when they thought the guards could not hear. They said Alpha King Drayven spent weeks locked in the East Wing chambers. That he never came down to dine with his court. That only his most trusted guards, led by someone called Commander Thorne, were permitted anywhere near him. "His dying," one kitchen maid whispered to another while Vaelis scrubbed pots nearby. "That's why Lady Ceres looks so desperate. The curse is killing him slowly, and when he dies without an heir, the kingdom falls to Lord Casimir Vane." "Better him than a cursed monster," the other replied. Vaelis's hands stilled in the wash water. A cursed monster. Was that truly what the king was? Or was he simply suffering, alone, with no one able to help him? The thought bothered her more than it should have. 4 weeks had passed since Vaelis arrived at Castle Shadowthorn. But today felt different. The air itself seemed charged with tension, crackling like lightning before a storm. It was the day of the lunar eclipse. Vaelis overheard urgent conversations among the guards throughout the afternoon. They spoke in low, tense voices, but she caught fragments while delivering medicinal supplies. The chains are reinforced this time. May the old gods have mercy on us all. Clear the eastern corridors. No one goes near the royal chambers tonight. She did not understand, but something in their tone left her deeply uneasy. That evening, Vaelis worked later than usual. Lady Ceres had ordered her to prepare emergency supplies, bandages, pain remedies, sedatives strong enough to drop a horse. The head healer's hands had been shaking as she gave instructions, something Vaelis had never seen before. By the time she finished, it was well past midnight. The castle lay submerged in unnatural silence, as though every living thing was holding its breath. She walked down the corridor toward the servants' quarters, her feet aching, her eyes burning with exhaustion. Her handkerchief, tucked as always in her dress pocket, caught on something and tumbled free, rolling across the stone floor. Vaelis bent to retrieve it, but it skittered away, carried by a strange draft that seemed to pull toward the forbidden east wing. She chased it down the empty hallway, her heart beginning to pound. The handkerchief finally stopped near a massive set of sealed doors, the ones every servant knew to avoid. Dark wood reinforced with iron. Ancient runes carved into the frame that seemed to pulse with faint light. Vaelis reached for her handkerchief, her fingers just closing around the embroidered fabric, when she heard it. A sound from beyond those sealed doors. Low. Guttural. Filled with such profound agony that it drove the breath from her lungs. It was not a roar of rage. It was the sound of someone suffering unbearably, trapped in torment they could not escape. And something inside Vaelis, some instinct she did not understand, some pull she could not name, responded. Her healer's heart recognized pain when it heard it. And this pain was destroying someone from the inside out. She should have turned back. She should have run to her bunk and buried her head under her pillow and pretended she had heard nothing. But instead, Vaelis Thorne stood before the forbidden doors with her handkerchief pressed against her chest and made a choice that would change 2 destinies forever. Someone is dying in there. And I'm a healer. She reached for the door handle. Behind those sealed doors, Alpha King Drayven Korr suddenly stopped mid-transformation, his wolf freezing in confusion. He scented the air violently, his head snapping toward the entrance. Lavender. Rain. Ancient herbs. Healer's blood. Impossible. The scent that had haunted his dreams for years. The mate he thought was only prophecy. She was here. She was real. And she was about to walk directly into the nightmare he had become. The lunar eclipse began at sundown, painting Castle Shadowthorn in shades of crimson and shadow. Vaelis had been ordered to the servants' quarters with everyone else. All staff confined. All corridors cleared. The castle locked down like a fortress preparing for siege. She sat on her bunk, listening to the other servants whisper prayers and clutch protective charms. Outside, beyond their locked door, she could hear the heavy tread of guards taking positions, the clank of weapons, the low murmur of hurried commands. Then, just after midnight, it began. A sound like thunder shook the castle walls. Magic, raw and violent, exploded somewhere above them. The stone floor trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Several servants screamed. Others covered their ears and curled into themselves. Through the small window, Vaelis saw guards running from the east wing, their faces pale with terror. Some were unconscious, being dragged by their companions. Others stumbled, bleeding from their ears and noses. Emergency bells began ringing throughout the castle. Then she heard Lady Ceres's voice in the corridor outside, sharp with panic. Evacuate the entire eastern section. The barriers have failed. Get everyone out, now. The servants around Vaelis began sobbing. One woman rocked back and forth, muttering prayers to gods Vaelis did not know. And then, cutting through all of it, came the howling. It was not the sound of an animal. It was agony given voice, raw, endless, unbearable suffering that seemed to claw at the very air itself. The sound of someone being destroyed from within, fighting a battle they could not win, trapped in torment that would not end. Every servant in the room pressed their hands over their ears, trying to block it out. Some were crying. Others had gone completely silent with fear. But something inside Vaelis did not recoil. Instead, something deep in her chest, something she had never felt before, responded. A pull. A recognition. A certainty that sang through her bones. He needs me. The thought was insane. She did not know the king. She had never even seen him. She was no one, just an orphan with basic healing skills and nowhere else to go. But her body was already moving. Vaelis stood, ignoring the startled looks from the other servants. She moved to the door, tested it, unlocked in the chaos. The guards had abandoned their posts. She slipped into the corridor. "Where are you going?" someone hissed behind her. "Are you insane?" Vaelis did not answer. She could not have explained it if she tried. She simply moved toward the sound of suffering, drawn like a moth to flame. The corridors were abandoned. Every guard who normally patrolled the east wing had fled or fallen. Vaelis passed unconscious bodies, scorch marks on stone walls, shattered magical barriers that still sparked with dying energy. The closer she got to the royal chambers, the heavier the air became. It pressed against her skin like a physical weight, making each breath harder than the last. But beneath the pressure, beneath the wrongness, she felt something else. A thread. Invisible. Unbreakable. Pulling her forward. This way. This way. She reached a long corridor lit only by flickering torches. At its far end stood massive doors of dark wood reinforced with black iron, the same doors where her handkerchief had fallen earlier. Now those doors stood partially open, blown off their hinges by some tremendous force. The howling had stopped. Now there was only silence. Somehow, that was worse. Vaelis approached slowly, every instinct screaming at her to run. Her hands were shaking. Her heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. But she kept walking. She reached the threshold and looked inside. The royal chambers were destroyed. Furniture overturned and splintered. Tapestries torn from walls. Deep claw marks gouged into stone. The massive bed frame twisted as though made of clay instead of oak. And in the center of the wreckage, collapsed on his knees, was the Alpha King. Drayven Korr was immense, taller and broader than any man Vaelis had ever seen. Long dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. Bare torso covered in muscles that twitched and spasmed violently. Scars crisscrossed his shoulders and back, testament to battles she could not imagine. But what froze her in true terror was his condition. He was trapped between forms. Claws erupted from his fingertips only to retract partially, the transformation incomplete and agonizing. His teeth lengthened into fangs, then shortened again, unable to settle. His skin rippled as though something massive was trying to tear free from within. His eyes, golden and wild and nearly inhuman, burned with pain so profound it was visible in every line of his face. The transformation would not complete. And it was destroying him. He sensed her presence. His head snapped up, those golden eyes locking onto her with predatory focus. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then his expression shifted, confusion cutting through the agony. He scented the air, his entire body going rigid. "No," he rasped, his voice barely human. "You shouldn't," he gasped as another spasm of pain racked through him. "Run. Please. I can't control." Vaelis should have obeyed. Every rational thought screamed at her to flee. But instead, she stepped into the room. "I'm a healer," she said softly, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let me help you." "You can't help." His claws dug into the stone floor, cracking it. "No one can." The curse, he choked on the words. 3 generations. Tried everything. Just go. Before I. He lunged toward her with terrifying speed. Vaelis gasped but held her ground. He stopped mere inches from her throat, his fangs bared, every muscle coiled to strike. And then something impossible happened. Her scent hit him fully, lavender and rain and something ancient, something that sang to the wolf trapped inside him. His wolf, the beast that had been tearing him apart for hours, suddenly went completely still. It whined. Confused. Yearning. Mate. Vaelis did not understand what was happening. She only knew that this man, this king, was in agony, and her hands were moving before she could think. She reached up slowly and placed her palm against his chest, right over his racing heart. Warmth flooded from her hand, silver light that she had never known she possessed, lunar magic awakening for the first time. Drayven gasped. His eyes widened in shock. The violent transformation reversed. The claws fully retracted. His fangs receded. The rippling beneath his skin ceased. His wolf settled, not through force or chains, but through peace. For the first time in 3 generations, the curse simply stopped. He collapsed forward, catching himself on his hands, breathing hard. Fully human. Fully himself. Slowly, trembling, he looked up at her. His eyes were still gold, they would always be gold, but they were clear now. Aware. Filled with wonder and terror and something that looked like reverence. "What are you?" he whispered. Vaelis knelt beside him, her hand still glowing faintly silver, and whispered back. "I don't know." For the first hour, neither of them spoke. Drayven Korr, Alpha King of Shadowthorn, simply sat against the destroyed wall of his chambers, breathing. Just breathing. As though it were a gift he had forgotten existed. Vaelis knelt nearby, her healer's instincts taking over. She retrieved supplies from the scattered remains of the chamber. Bandages, salve, water from an overturned pitcher. She tended the wounds on his hands where his own claws had torn flesh, her touch gentle and efficient. He watched her with an intensity that should have frightened her. Should have made her feel exposed, vulnerable. Instead, it made her feel seen. 3 generations, he finally said, his voice rough from screaming. 3 generations of healers, mags, blood witches, priestesses. Every lunar eclipse, the curse manifests stronger. Tonight was the worst it's ever been. He looked at his hands, fully human now, no trace of claws. The barriers failed within an hour. My guards couldn't contain me. I destroyed half the chamber before the transformation even peaked. His golden eyes lifted to hers. And then you walked in. And it just stopped. Vaelis focused on rapping his knuckles, not meeting his gaze. I didn't do anything. I heard you. The pain. I couldn't ignore it. What is your name? She hesitated. Vaelis. Vaelis Thorne. Though Thorne isn't real, it's what they call all the foundlings at St. Calla's sanctuary. I don't have a real surname. I'm no one. His hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm, stopping her movements. You are not no one. Look at me. Slowly, she raised her eyes. The way he looked at her made her chest tight. As though she were precious. As though she mattered. Do you know what you did? His thumb brushed across her inner wrist, over her racing pulse. You calmed a curse that has killed 2 of my ancestors. You walked into a room where trained warriors feared to tread. You touched me when I was more beast than man, and you brought me back. I'm just a healer. You are my mate. The words hung in the air between them. Vaelis went completely still. What? Drayven's expression was raw, vulnerable in a way she suspected few people ever witnessed. Fated mates. It's rare, even among wolves. Some go their entire lives without finding theirs. The bond is absolute. Unbreakable. Your soul recognizes mine. Mine recognizes yours. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. My wolf knew you before I did. The moment your scent reached me, everything changed. The beast that was tearing me apart suddenly had a reason to be gentle. To be human. Vaelis shook her head, pulling back. That's impossible. Kings don't have orphan mates. You're confusing gratitude with destiny. I helped you through a bad episode, that's all. It's not gratitude. His intensity sharpened. And you know it isn't. Tell me you don't feel it. The pull. The recognition. Tell me your heart doesn't race when I look at you, not from fear but from knowing. She couldn't tell him that. Because it would be a lie. From the moment she had entered this room, something inside her had settled. As though she had been searching her entire life without knowing it, and suddenly, impossibly, she had found what she was looking for. I'm no one, she whispered again, but her voice broke. I have nothing. No family, no history, no worth. He cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. You are everything. You are the answer to a curse 3 generations old. You are the one person in this entire realm who can touch me without fear. His voice roughened with emotion. You are mine. And I am yours. If you'll have me. You don't even know me. Then let me. They talked through the night. Drayven told her about the curse, how his great-grandfather had led a massacre against moon priestesses who had refused to serve the crown. How the eldest priestess, with her dying breath, had cursed the Korr bloodline. Every eclipse, the Alpha King would lose himself to his wolf, becoming more monster than man, until the line ended in madness or death. 2 of my ancestors died during the transformation, he said quietly. My father survived, barely, but it weakened him. He died young. I inherited the throne at 19, and I've been fighting this curse ever since. He had isolated himself deliberately. Never took a mate. Never allowed himself emotional connections. Because everyone he cared about became a target, either for his enemies or for his own wolf when control slipped. I've been alone for so long, he admitted, staring at his scarred hands. I forgot what it felt like to be anything else. Vaelis shared her story, 23 years of invisibility. Of being one orphan among many, never special, never chosen. Of leaving the only home she had ever known with nothing but 3 copper coins and a handkerchief. This handkerchief, she pulled it from her pocket, showing him the embroidered initials VT, is the only proof I existed before the orphanage. The only thing that connects me to whoever I was supposed to be. Drayven took it gently, studying the careful stitching. VT. What does it mean to you? It means I came from somewhere. That someone, once, cared enough to embroider my initials. Even if they didn't care enough to keep me. He folded the handkerchief carefully and pressed it back into her hands. You exist now. Here. With me. And I will never let you feel invisible again. The way he said it, like a vow, like a promise written in stone, made her chest ache. They sat close together amid the wreckage, and slowly, tentatively, the distance between them disappeared. His hand found hers. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Tell me what you want, he murmured. Because what I want is to keep you here. Forever. But you have to choose this. Choose me. I'm afraid, she admitted. I've never mattered to anyone. What if I wake up tomorrow and this was all just? He kissed her. Gentle at first, then deeper when she gasped and leaned into him. His hand tangled in her hair. Her fingers pressed against his chest, feeling his heart race against her palm. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. You matter to me. You matter more than kingdoms or crowns or curses. Stay with me. Please. And Vaelis, who had never been chosen for anything in her entire life, chose him back. She woke in his arms as dawn light crept through the destroyed chamber. For a moment, she simply breathed in the warmth of him, the solid reality of his presence. Then she heard voices outside the chamber, guards returning now that the danger had passed. Another healer, someone was saying. Lady Ceres's cold voice, sharp with frustration. The king's latest attempt. Let's see how long this one lasts before she realizes it's hopeless. Vaelis's heart stopped. Another healer. The latest attempt. She looked down at Drayven, still sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. He didn't want me. He just needed someone to fix him. All the old wounds tore open at once. The lifetime of being unwanted. Of being useful but never treasured. Of being invisible except when someone needed something. She was a solution. A treatment. Not a mate. Not chosen. How could I have been so foolish? Carefully, trying not to wake him, Vaelis extracted herself from his embrace. Her hands were shaking as she smoothed her wrinkled dress, as she looked around for anything she might have left behind. Her handkerchief lay on the pillow beside him. She picked it up, memorizing his face one last time, the strong lines softened in sleep, the scars that told stories of survival, the dark hair falling across his forehead. Then she placed the handkerchief back on the pillow. The only thing of value she owned. The only gift she could give him. And Vaelis Thorne, who had spent her entire life being left behind, did the leaving first. She slipped through the servants' passage, down hidden corridors, and out of Castle Shadowthorn before anyone could stop her. Behind her, in the destroyed royal chamber, Drayven Korr's eyes opened. He reached for her instinctively, and found only empty space. And a square of embroidered cloth that smelled of lavender and rain. His wolf howled inside him. Not with rage, but with soul-deep anguish. She's gone. Our mate is gone. He brought the handkerchief to his face, breathing in her scent, and made a vow that would shake the kingdom. I will find you. No matter how far you run. No matter how long it takes. You are mine, Vaelis Thorne. And I am yours. And nothing, not fear, not curses, not the entire realm itself, will keep us apart. The hunt had begun. Alpha King Drayven Korr did something no ruler in the kingdom's history had ever done. He abandoned his throne. He woke alone in chambers still reeking of transformation, his body unmarred for the first time in decades. No gouges in his flesh where claws had erupted. No blood staining the sheets. No shattered furniture bearing witness to the beast's rage. Just silence. An absence. His hand found the square of cloth on the pillow beside him before his mind fully registered what it was. Embroidered initials caught the morning light. VT. Vaelis Thorne. The scent of lavender and rain still clung to the fabric, faint but unmistakable. He brought it to his face, inhaling deeply, and his wolf stirred inside him, not with violence, but with longing so fierce it bordered on physical pain. She was gone. Drayven was on his feet before conscious thought caught up with instinct. He threw open the chamber doors, startling the guards posted outside. "The healer," he demanded, his voice rough from hours of howling. "The girl who was here last night. Where is she?" The guards exchanged uncertain glances. "Your Majesty, we saw no one enter or leave." "Don't lie to me." Gold bled into his eyes despite his efforts at control. "There was a woman here. Auburn hair, storm grey eyes, healer's training. Find her. Now." He searched the castle himself, moving through corridors with predatory speed. Servants scattered before him like leaves before a storm. He interrogated anyone who might have seen her, but they all gave the same useless answers. When he finally found Lady Ceres in the healing chambers, something in her expression made his wolf snarl. "The girl from last night," he said without preamble. "Where did she go?" Ceres looked up from the herbs she was sorting, her pale eyes revealing nothing. "Which girl, Your Majesty?" "Several servants left this morning. They come and go frequently, the work is demanding." "Don't play games with me, Ceres." He stepped closer, and to her credit, she didn't flinch. "You hired her. I need her name, her history, everything you know." "Vaelis Thorne." Ceres set down the mortar she'd been holding. "Orphan from St. Calla's sanctuary. No family, no connections. She worked here for 4 weeks, then departed at dawn. That's all I know." "Why did she leave?" Something flickered across Ceres's face, satisfaction, perhaps, though it vanished too quickly for him to be certain. "I imagine she found the work too difficult. As I said, servants come and go." "Liar." Every instinct screamed it, but Drayven had no proof. He turned away before his wolf could act on the rage building in his chest. Back in his chambers, he stood at the window overlooking the kingdoms spread below. His kingdom. His responsibility. His prison. For 3 generations, the curse had defined his bloodline. His great-grandfather had slaughtered moon priestesses in a bid for absolute power, and their dying breaths had woven vengeance into his descendants' very bones. Every heir since had suffered the same fate. During lunar eclipses, the wolf within rose uncontrollable, destroying everything in its path. Drayven had spent his entire reign isolated, surrounded by guards and magical barriers, waiting for the day the transformation would last forever and they'd have no choice but to put him down like a rabid animal. Until last night. She had walked into his nightmare wearing compassion like armor. She had touched him with gentle hands and somehow, impossibly, given his wolf peace. And now she was gone, and he felt like he was suffocating. The mate bond. He thought it was myth, the fated connection between souls that transcended pack law and bloodline. But wolves didn't lie about such things. The recognition had been instant, absolute. His wolf had known her before his human mind could process her presence. Which meant she was suffering too. The bond worked both ways. Wherever she was, she would be feeling this same hollow ache, this same desperate need. "Commander Theron," he called, knowing his second-in-command waited just outside. The grizzled warrior entered immediately. "Your Majesty. Assemble search parties. I want every village, every town, every forgotten corner of this kingdom searched. We're looking for a young woman, auburn hair, healer's training, traveling alone. She may be using a false name." Theron's eyebrows rose slightly. "May I ask?" "No." Drayven's tone left no room for argument. "You may not. Just find her. It will be done." But as Theron left to organize the search, Drayven stared down at the handkerchief in his hands and felt doubt creep in like poison. What if she didn't want to be found? What if she'd run precisely because she felt the bond and rejected it? He was a cursed king. A monster. What could he possibly offer someone like her except danger and darkness? Everything, his wolf answered fiercely. We can offer her everything. 3 weeks crawled past like years. Vaelis had been running since dawn broke over Castle Shadowthorn. She'd slipped through the servants' passages she'd memorized during her time there, walked the eastern road until her feet bled, then hitched rides on merchant wagons heading anywhere that wasn't the capital. She used the name Lissa now. Simple. Forgettable. Each village she passed through needed healers. There was always work for someone with her skills. She set broken bones in a farming hamlet. She delivered a breech baby in a mountain settlement. She treated fever in a mining town where the water ran black with soot. And every night, she dreamed of golden eyes. The dreams were becoming more vivid. She would wake gasping, certain she could still feel his hands on her skin, still hear his voice saying her name like a prayer. Her body ached in ways that had nothing to do with exhaustion. Something was wrong with her. She was tired constantly despite sleeping. Food tasted like ash. Her senses had sharpened to painful degrees. She could hear conversations from rooms away, smell rain on the wind hours before it arrived. In the mountain village of Grey Mist, she finally sought answers. The elderly healer there, a woman named Marta with kind eyes and weathered hands, examined her with growing concern. Child, Marta said at last, you're pregnant. The world tilted sideways. Vaelis gripped the examination table to keep from falling. That's impossible. But it wasn't impossible. One night. One perfect, devastating night. And there's something else. Marta's gaze sharpened. Your magic is awakening. I can see it in your blood, in your aura. This child you carry is catalyzing something ancient inside you. I don't have magic. I'm just a healer. No, dear one. You're far more than that. That night, Vaelis sat alone in the small room she'd rented above Grey Mist's only tavern. She placed her hand over her still flat stomach and felt tears burn tracks down her face. A baby. Drayven's baby. She should tell him. She knew that. But how could she return to Castle Shadowthorn and say, Your Majesty, remember the disposable healer who was just another failed attempt to fix you? Well, she's carrying your heir. He would take the child. Of course he would. A king needed heirs, especially a cursed one without hope of more children. And she would be relegated to some comfortable prison, kept alive for the baby's sake but otherwise invisible. Just like always. The thought made her want to scream. She was still wrestling with impossible choices when she felt it, a prickling awareness that raised every hair on her arms. Being watched. Vaelis moved to the window and looked down at the village square below. Riders were approaching. Royal banners snapped in the wind, black fabric emblazoned with the howling wolf sigil. Her heart stopped, then restarted at triple speed. He came for me. She was halfway down the stairs before rational thought could intervene, running toward the village entrance like her soul depended on it. The lead rider dismounted in the village square, and even from a distance, she would have known him anywhere. Dark hair pulled back from a face carved by duty and pain. Eyes that shifted between human brown and wolf gold. The set of his shoulders spoke of power barely leashed. Drayven Korr turned slowly, scanning the gathered villagers, and then his gaze found hers across the distance. Time stopped. He took one step toward her. Then another. Then he was running, closing the space between them with inhuman speed. Vaelis met him halfway. And when Drayven Korr, Alpha King of Shadowmere, the most powerful wolf in the realm, dropped to his knees in the dirt before her, the entire village fell silent. I am not here as your king, he said, his voice breaking on the words. I am here as the man who cannot breathe without you. Vaelis looked down at him through blurring tears, one hand still pressed protectively over her stomach, and whispered, You shouldn't have come. I had no choice. He reached for her hand, his touch reverent. You're my mate. You're everything. And I will spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you, if you'll let me. The dam inside her broke. Vaelis collapsed into his arms, and for the first time in weeks, the hollow ache in her chest began to ease. She had so much to tell him. About the baby. About her awakening magic. About why she ran. But for now, she just held on and let herself believe that maybe, impossibly, she had finally found her way home. Vaelis meant to stay strong. She meant to explain, to make him understand why she left. But when Drayven touched her face with trembling hands, all her walls crumbled. Why did you run? His voice was raw, stripped of all royal composure. Do you know what it did to me? Waking up and finding you gone? Feeling the bond screaming that you were hurting somewhere and I couldn't reach you. The accusation in his tone cut deeper than any blade. Vaelis tried to pull away, but his hands tightened gently on her shoulders. I heard them, she whispered. Outside your chambers that morning. Lady Ceres said I was the king's latest healer. She wondered how long I would last. And I realized, her voice broke. I was just another attempt to fix you. Another failure waiting to happen. Drayven's expression shifted from pain to fury so quickly it stole her breath. Another, he stopped, visibly forcing himself toward calm. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. Vaelis. Look at me. She met his golden eyes reluctantly. You are my mate, he said, each word deliberate and fierce. You are not a healer I hired. You are not a tool to cure my curse. You are the other half of my soul, bound to me by something older than pack law or kingdom politics. You are permanent. You are everything. But I'm nobody, she protested weakly. I have no name, no family, no. You have me. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. And I have you. That's all that matters. Vaelis felt fresh tears spill over. She had so many things she needed to tell him, but the words tangled in her throat. There's something you need to know, she finally managed. Drayven pulled back just enough to study her face. Tell me. I'm pregnant. The world seemed to stop spinning. Drayven's eyes widened, his gaze dropping immediately to her stomach. His hand followed, trembling as he pressed his palm gently against her abdomen. A child, he breathed. Our child. When he looked up again, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. And you were going to face this alone? Raise my heir in some forgotten village where I'd never find you. I didn't think you'd want. He laughed, the sound breaking. Vaelis, I would burn this entire kingdom to ash before I let you suffer alone. You're carrying the future of my bloodline. You're carrying the only thing that matters more than you do, our family. Something fierce and protective blazed in his expression as he stood, pulling her up with him. We're leaving. Now. You're coming back to Castle Shadowthorn where you belong. Drayven, I can't just. Yes, you can. His tone gentled. Please. Let me protect you. Both of you. The raw vulnerability in his voice shattered the last of her resistance. She nodded. The village inn's finest room wasn't much, a narrow bed, a wash basin, threadbare curtains, but Drayven treated it like a palace chamber. He insisted Vaelis rest while he arranged for supplies and spoke with his guards. When he finally returned, night had fallen. He brought food, real food, not the scraps she'd been surviving on, and watched with satisfaction as she ate. Tell me about the baby, he said quietly. Are you well? Have you seen a proper healer? An elderly woman in this village examined me. She said the pregnancy is progressing normally, but... Vaelis hesitated. But what? She said my magic is awakening. That carrying your child is acting as a catalyst for something dormant in my blood. Drayven went very still. What kind of magic? She didn't know. But I've been experiencing things, heightened senses, strange dreams, moments where I can feel energy moving through me. She looked down at her hands. I don't understand what's happening to me. He reached across the small table and laced his fingers through hers. Then we'll find answers together. There are scholars at the castle, ancient texts. If you have magic in your bloodline, we'll discover its source. The casual certainty in his voice, the assumption that her problems were now his problems, made her throat tight. What happened to your curse? She asked. After I left, did it? It's gone. Wonder crept into his expression. Completely gone. I haven't felt the beast's rage since you calmed my wolf that night. You didn't just stop the transformation, Vaelis. You healed something I thought was broken beyond repair. How is that possible? I don't know. But I've stopped fighting what I am. The wolf and the man are finally working together instead of tearing each other apart. He paused. You were the catalyst for that too. You saw the monster and didn't run. You treated me like I was worth saving. You are worth saving, she said fiercely. The look he gave her was molten. Say yes. Yes to what? Come back with me. Be my Luna. Rule beside me. Let me give you the life you deserve, safety, respect, a family that will never abandon you. His grip on her hands tightened. I know I'm asking for everything. I know you have every reason to refuse. But please, Vaelis. Choose me. Choose us. She wanted to. Gods, she wanted to so badly it hurt. But something in her still whispered that girls like her didn't get happy endings. That this was temporary. That someday he would realize she wasn't enough. I'm scared, she admitted in a small voice. So am I. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing each knuckle with devastating gentleness. But I'd rather face fear with you than face certainty alone. The words broke something open inside her. She stood, rounding the table, and Drayven pulled her into his lap without hesitation. Yes, she whispered against his mouth. I'll come back. I'll be your Luna. His kiss tasted like relief and promise and home. They stayed awake through the night, talking in whispers. He told her about the loneliness of ruling alone, the burden of expectations, the crushing weight of always being strong. She told him about growing up invisible, about learning to take up as little space as possible, about the desperate hunger to matter to someone. You matter to me, he murmured into her hair. You matter more than breathing. When dawn finally crept through the threadbare curtains, Vaelis felt hope beginning to take root. Maybe this could work. Maybe she deserved this. Maybe. The door exploded inward. Drayven was on his feet instantly, shoving Vaelis behind him as soldiers flooded the room. But these weren't his guards. These men wore different colors, the silver and crimson of House Vane. And walking through the doorway behind them, smiling like a predator who'd finally cornered his prey, was Lord Casimir Vane. Cousin, Casimir purred, his cold eyes sliding from Drayven to Vaelis. How touching. The cursed king abandons his throne for a common servant. Get out, Drayven snarled, his voice dropping to a wolf's growl. Before I tear your throat out. I don't think so. Casimir gestured, and more soldiers appeared, surrounding them. You see, I've been waiting for this moment. You've finally given me the leverage I need. Lady Ceres glided into the room behind him, her pale eyes glittering with satisfaction. Vaelis's stomach dropped. You were working together this whole time. Very perceptive, Ceres said smoothly. I've been intensifying your curse for years, Drayven. Carefully. Methodically. Ensuring you'd eventually lose control during an eclipse and have to be put down. Then Lord Casimir would take the throne, as the law dictates. But you ruined everything, Casimir added, his gaze fixing on Vaelis with disturbing intensity. This little nobody broke his curse with one touch. Unacceptable. Drayven's hands shifted, claws beginning to emerge. I'll kill you both. No, you won't. Casimir snapped his fingers, and soldiers grabbed Vaelis, yanking her away from Drayven's protection. Because if you move, they'll slit her throat. And that baby she's carrying? Well, that would be unfortunate. Vaelis gasped as rough hands pinned her arms. Drayven lunged forward, but froze when cold steel pressed against her neck. That's better. Casimir's smile widened. Now, cousin, let me explain what's going to happen. I'm invoking the Blood Moon Duel, ancient alpha law that even you cannot refuse. We fight from moonrise to sunrise. No interference. No mercy. Winner takes the throne and everything that comes with it. Including her, Ceres added with cruel pleasure. You're insane, Drayven spat. I'll destroy you in combat. Perhaps. But you see, we've planned for every eventuality. Casimir's expression turned calculating. The next blood moon rises in 3 days. And during that particular eclipse, your curse will resurface. Lady Ceres has made certain of it. Vaelis felt ice flood her veins. No. The curse is broken. Not broken, dear girl. Merely dormant. Ceres looked pleased with herself. I've been poisoning him with trace amounts of blood magic for months. It's in his system, waiting to be triggered. During the blood moon, it will activate whether he wants it to or not. And this time, not even you can stop it. Drayven's face had gone pale. Vaelis. Don't do this, Vaelis pleaded, struggling against the soldiers. He's planning something. This is a trap. Of course it's a trap, Casimir agreed cheerfully. But what choice does he have? Refuse the challenge, and I'll kill you both right here, right now. Accept it, and at least he gets to die fighting. As an alpha should. Drayven's golden eyes met hers across the room, and she saw the moment he made his decision. I accept your challenge, he said, his voice like gravel. But if you harm her before the duel, I'll hunt down everyone you've ever cared about and make you watch them die. Such spirit. Casimir laughed. Don't worry, cousin. I need her alive and healthy. After all, she's carrying valuable cargo. His expression turned predatory. Once you're dead, she'll make an excellent vessel for continuing your bloodline, under my direction, of course. The implication made Vaelis's stomach revolt. Drayven roared, lunging forward, but soldiers swarmed him, forcing him to his knees with sheer numbers. Take them, Casimir ordered. Separate cells until the blood moon rises. I want them to have plenty of time to contemplate their situation. As soldiers dragged Vaelis toward the door, she screamed Drayven's name. His answering howl shook the walls, a sound of pure anguish and rage that would haunt her nightmares. The last thing she saw before they pulled her into the corridor was his golden eyes, burning with desperate promise. I will not lose you. Not again. But as the door slammed shut between them, Vaelis couldn't shake the terrible certainty that this time, love wouldn't be enough to save them. The ancient dueling circle was carved into stone at the kingdom's highest peak, where wolf law was older than memory and blood debts were always paid. Vaelis had been imprisoned for 3 days in a tower cell, magical restraints burning cold against her wrists. Through the narrow window, she'd watched the sky darken as the blood moon prepared to rise, a crimson shadow creeping across the sun like a wound opening in the heavens. Now they dragged her to the summit where hundreds had gathered. The entire court stood in rigid formation around the dueling circle, a massive ring of obsidian stone etched with ancient runes that pulsed with sickly red light. Guards, nobles, servants, all forced to witness what came next. Casimir stood at the circle's edge, already stripped to the waist, his body covered in ritual scars. He looked confident, eager. And across from him, flanked by soldiers, stood Drayven. Their eyes met across the distance, and Vaelis felt the mate bond flare with such intensity it stole her breath. He looked gaunt, shadows carved beneath his eyes, but his gaze burned with ferocious determination. I love you, she tried to send through the bond, not knowing if he could feel it. His jaw tightened, and she knew he had. An elder alpha stepped into the center of the circle, an ancient wolf with silver fur and eyes that had witnessed centuries. His voice rang out across the assembled crowd. By the old laws, Lord Casimir Vane has invoked the Blood Moon duel. The challenge has been accepted by Alpha King Drayven Korr. The terms are absolute. Combat begins at moonrise and ends only at sunrise. No interference. No mercy. No surrender except through death or submission. The victor claims throne, territory, and all that belongs to the defeated. Casimir smiled, his gaze sliding to Vaelis with possessive hunger. Vaelis's stomach turned. The magical restraints bit deeper into her wrists as she tried to move forward, but guards held her in place at the circle's edge. Let the blood moon bear witness, the elder intoned. Let the duel begin. The moon crested the mountain peak, washing everything in crimson light. Both alphas shifted. Drayven's transformation was fluid, powerful, his massive black wolf emerging with golden eyes that blazed like molten fire. He was enormous, all rippling muscle and lethal grace. Casimir's grey wolf was smaller but scarred from countless battles, his movements calculated and precise. They circled each other, growls reverberating through the stone beneath Vaelis's feet. Then Casimir lunged. The fight exploded into savage violence. Fangs and claws tore through fur and flesh. Drayven fought with devastating efficiency, each strike meant to cripple, to dominate. But Casimir didn't fight to win. He fought to survive. Vaelis watched in growing horror as the pattern became clear. Casimir was defensive, evasive, constantly retreating. He wasn't trying to defeat Drayven, he was stalling. Waiting for something. An hour passed. Then 2. Drayven landed blow after blow, driving Casimir back against the circle's edge. Victory seemed inevitable. Then Vaelis felt it, a shift in the air, a spike of wrongness that made her magic flower in warning. Drayven stumbled mid-strike, his wolf's movements suddenly jerky and uncoordinated. His golden eyes flickered, confusion and pain warring across his lupine features. "No," Vaelis whispered. "No, no, no." The curse. The poison in his blood was activating. Casimir's wolf backed away, circling with predatory patience as Drayven began to lose control. His massive frame convulsed, the transformation becoming unstable. One moment wolf, the next moment something caught between forms, claws elongating into grotesque talons, fangs distorting his jaw, his golden eyes going feral and wild. "Did you think one night with a servant cured generations of blood debt?" Casimir's voice rang out, shifted back to human form just long enough to gloat. "The curse is in your bones, cousin. And tonight, it will consume you completely." Drayven's wolf threw back its head and howled, a sound of such anguish that Vaelis felt it like a blade through her heart. He was fighting on two fronts now, Casimir circling for the kill, and the beast inside trying to tear him apart from within. Vaelis's magic surged in response to his pain, silver light crackling around her restraints. The guards holding her stumbled back with shocked curses as the magical bindings began to crack. Lady Ceres noticed immediately. "Stop her. Don't let her interfere." But before the guards could reach Vaelis, a new figure materialized at the circle's edge. Elder Morwen. The ancient moon priestess appeared as if stepping through a veil of starlight, her presence radiating power that made even the assembled wolves bow their heads instinctively. She was impossibly old, her hair like silver moonlight, her eyes holding the weight of centuries. With a gesture, she shattered Vaelis's restraints completely. "Enough," Morwen said, her voice carrying across the summit like thunder. "This farce ends now." Casimir shifted back to human form, fury twisting his features. "You have no authority here, priestess. This is wolf law. And I am the last keeper of the laws that bound your kind long before alphas learned to speak." Morwen's gaze swept across the assembly. "This girl carries the blood of my sister's daughter's line. She is Lunar Eclipse. She is the last moon priestess born to this realm." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vaelis felt the words slam into her like physical blows. "Ellsworth. I have a name. A real name." Morwen turned to her, ancient eyes filled with terrible knowledge. "Your ancestor cursed his bloodline 3 generations ago when his great-grandfather slaughtered our sacred sisterhood. The prophecy was clear. When the last daughter forgives, the blood debt ends." Vaelis looked at Drayven, still trapped in agonized transformation, his wolf tearing him apart. Then at Casimir, who had orchestrated this entire nightmare. The choice crystallized with absolute clarity. She could let Drayven fall. Let the curse consume him. Let Casimir claim victory and everything that came with it. Or she could step into the forbidden circle and rewrite destiny itself. Vaelis ran. Casimir lunged to intercept her, but Morwen's power froze him mid-stride. The duel allows no interference, except from those with the right to claim what's being fought over. And she carries his child. She has every right. Vaelis threw herself toward Drayven's convulsing form, and his feral golden eyes locked onto her. For one terrible moment, she thought he wouldn't recognize her. Then his wolf stopped. Drayven's wolf turned on Vaelis with feral golden eyes, and stopped. She stood before him, arms spread wide, no fear in her storm-grey gaze. "Just certainty. Just love. You are not the curse," she said, her voice carrying across the silent summit. "You are mine. And I forgive every debt your ancestors owed." She placed both hands on his massive head, and silver light erupted from her palms. It wasn't the gentle warmth from before. This was power, ancient, absolute, the full weight of lunar magic awakening in her blood. It poured through her like liquid starlight, flooding into Drayven's convulsing form. Images flashed through both their minds, generations of violence, moon priestesses murdered for their power, blood-soaking sacred ground, a dying woman's curse woven with her last breath. Hatred and vengeance passed down through bloodlines until no one remembered why they suffered, only that they must. And Vaelis looked at all of it, the rage, the injustice, the endless cycle of pain, and made a choice. "I break this," she whispered. "No more blood debt. No more suffering. It ends with forgiveness. It ends now." The silver light exploded outward in a nova that illuminated the entire mountain peak. When it faded, Drayven stood before her, fully human, fully wolf, both merged into perfect harmony. His eyes still glowed gold, but with clarity instead of madness. He was free. Casimir screamed in fury, shifting back to wolf form and lunging at them both. But Drayven was no longer fighting himself. He moved with devastating precision, meeting Casimir's attack with a single, brutal strike. His claws found Casimir's throat, slamming him into the stone circle hard enough to crack the ancient runes. "Submit," Drayven growled, his voice carrying both man and beast. "Or die." Casimir struggled for a moment, then went limp in submission, the fight draining from his eyes as he recognized absolute defeat. Drayven released him with contempt, then turned to where Lady Ceres was attempting to flee through the crowd. "Seize her." Guards moved instantly, capturing the treacherous healer. Ceres didn't struggle. She simply stared at Vaelis with naked hatred. "Treason," Drayven declared, his voice ringing with authority. "You both conspired to murder your king through prolonged poisoning and manipulation. The penalty is death, but I'll be merciful. Exile to the Shadowlands. You leave at dawn and never return." It was a worse fate than execution. The Shadowlands were cursed territory where nothing grew and magic twisted into nightmare. But it was justice. The elder Alpha stepped forward, his ancient eyes gleaming with approval. "The duel is concluded. Alpha King Drayven Korr is victorious. The blood moon bears witness." The assembled crowd erupted into howls, not of mourning, but of celebration. Their king had won. The curse was broken. But Drayven had eyes only for Vaelis. He crossed to her in 3 strides and dropped to one knee before the entire court, his hand finding hers with trembling reverence. "Vaelis Lunara Ellsworth," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you be my Luna? Not because you saved me. Not because you carry my child. But because you are the other half of my soul, and I cannot imagine ruling, or living, without you beside me." Vaelis looked down at him, this powerful king kneeling in the dirt for an orphan girl, and felt tears blur her vision. "I'm still nobody," she whispered. "I still have no past, no." Elder Morwen stepped forward, her ancient voice gentle. "You are the last moon priestess, child. Your mother was Lunara Ellsworth, high priestess of our order. She hid you at St. Callus Sanctuary to protect you from those who would use your power. She sacrificed herself so that one day, you could heal the rift between our people and the wolves." Vaelis's hand flew to her mouth. "My mother loved you enough to let you go, so you could choose your own destiny." Morwen's eyes held infinite compassion. "And you chose forgiveness. You chose love. You chose to break the cycle." She would be so proud. The weight of it, having a name, a history, a mother who loved her, threatened to buckle Vaelis's knees. But Drayven was there, standing and pulling her into his arms. "Yes," she breathed against his chest. "Yes, I'll be your Luna. I choose you. I choose us." His kiss tasted like victory and promise and forever. The court erupted into howls of approval as Drayven marked her before witnesses, the mate bond ritual that bound them irrevocably as partners, equals, and rulers. Vaelis Lunara Ellsworth became Lunar Queen of Shadowmere as the blood moon finally set and dawn broke across the mountains. 6 months later, the coronation ceremony blended wolf and priestess traditions in a spectacle never before witnessed. Vaelis stood in ceremonial robes of silver and midnight blue, her pregnant belly visible beneath the flowing fabric, as Elder Morwen placed the Luna's crown upon her head. "Let the realm witness," Morwen intoned. "The last moon priestess has risen. The blood debt is paid. A new era begins." The castle had been renamed Castle Lunaris, and the dark banners bearing the howling wolf now incorporated a silver moon crest. Reforms swept through the kingdom, protections for magic users, sanctuaries for healers, laws that honored both wolf tradition and ancient priestess wisdom. And in the place where St. Callus Sanctuary once stood, Vaelis had established a healing center and orphanage where no child would ever be called invisible or unwanted again. The labor came during a clear full moon, without curse or complication. Vaelis gave birth to a daughter with her mother's auburn hair and her father's golden eyes. Lunar Elara Korr entered the world wailing with fury, and her parents laughed through tears as they held her for the first time. That night, Vaelis stood at the window of their chambers, cradling Elara against her chest while Drayven wrapped his arms around them both. On the wall behind them, carefully framed and preserved, hung her embroidered handkerchief. But new stitching had been added beneath the original initials, a full name now, VLEK. Vaelis Lunara Ellsworth Korr. She'll never wonder who she is, Vaelis whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. She'll always know she's loved. She'll always have a home. Because you gave that to her, Drayven murmured. Just like you gave it to me. The invisible girl who changed a kingdom. The cursed king who learned that love was stronger than blood debt. Vaelis turned in his arms, their daughter nestled safely between them, and smiled. She finally had a name. She finally had a home. She finally had everything. If Vaelis and Drayven's story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment sharing which moment resonated most. Was it when she first calmed his wolf? When he knelt before her in the village? Or perhaps the final coronation? Your thoughts fuel these stories. Subscribe to Journey with more characters finding their way from darkness to light, from loneliness to belonging. Until next time, may you always find your way home.